understand that the lands north and south known today as the Americas are not a new world, but are in fact the western expanse of the same ancient dominion, northwest, southwest of Mexico. And these lands are the primeval soils spoken of in the ancient Hiccupa records. The Mississippi River is the Nile by another name. The Grand Canyon holds within its aged rocks memories and remnants of pyramids and hieroglyphs. And they and they are identical and conceptual related to those found in ancient Hiccupa Kemet. And what the contemporary world calls America is, in truth, the western bank of the same ancient Nile Valley culture that gave birth to law, science, jurisprudence, cosmology, grammatication, trigonometry, and navigation. Our ancient Moabite and Canaanite ancestors, which was the ancient, referred to in history as the ancient Moors, were the architects of civilization on both sides of that great river that was later to become what is known today as the Atlantic. And from northwest to southwest of Mexico, we established schools and universities of higher learning, of ether observatories, of maritime guilds, and of principled systems of jurisprudence that later informed and contributed to every empire that rose after us. And when Europe descended into its so-called Dark Ages, it was the Moorish light via the Renaissance that brought them out of darkness into light. It was the mathematics, the medicine, the astronomy, the philosophies, etc., that illuminated the path of Europe to rise. And those who claim now to have discovered civilization were in fact the students of those ancient ones that is really our forefathers and the true founders. The human tragedy of the Roman Pope's Inquisition was that it inverted, and it was used to invert the natural order. In other words, they countered everything that was divine in order to take power over humanity. This is why through the Unum Sanctum operations, they always claim to own humanity. Thus, the title that they take for themselves as God of the earth. That's where they get that from. All right, so under the papal bulls, such as Dum Diversas and Romanus Pontifex, as an example, the Roman Bishopric Church declared dominion over the lands and the peoples, and that they and these people and lands were not owned by them, and none of the culture was created by them. They co-opted. That was their motto, to co-opt and to cover up. And by decree, the Roman Catholic Church, by deception and by artifice, it converted the living people of the land, Moors, into legal fictions and used that claim as interlopers to transform their inheritances of both the lands and the peoples into property, and converting the nationalities of these people, their pedigree, into commonly known terms in these days as Negroes, Blacks, Indians, and slave, etc. And this was the birth of the conceptual conversion of the corrupted artificial person concepts that is used to this day by the corporate system that now masquerades in these days as quote unquote government. And it is the inhumane, and destructive construct that is the legal face of what we call the Satanic Inquisition networks, or SIN, sin, because Rome, through its claims of ownership over humanity and the lands, and is that false straw God claimed creation that they claim for themselves that belong to the actual Most High Creator. And these networks created by Rome, led in these days by Unum Sanctum Corporation Company, commonly known as United States Corporation Company, survived by changing costumes, changing faces, changing corporate names, expanding tentacles, and hiding via their fixed hex contracts. And from Kazakh to courthouse, from crown to corporation, the same ecclesiastical orders that burned libraries in Cordoba later chartered the companies that colonized the Western Hemisphere, commonly known as the Maghreb. They erased the Mexim from the maps, renamed the land America, and taught our descendants to see themselves as imports instead of as the original heirs, people of the land. And they replaced divine law with statute codes. They replaced consciousness with creed and dogma. And they replaced the sovereign inheritance of the natural people with falsely claimed debt. And that the true heirs, the Moors, is the true Inquisition. That operation is against the Moors. It is both spiritual, it is economic, and it's psychological. This is where people have been experiencing all the psychic attacks that they've been getting. All right. And yet, cycles turn. The very earth of a Mexim holds memory, and every tremor of truth is now shaking the world. The exposure of hidden archives, the collapse of fiat currencies, all of that is straw instrumentalities of the Satanists. And the resurgence of indigenous law is the land itself remembering who it is. And as we awaken, the spell of jurisdictional frauds dissolves. The republic rises again, not through rebellion, but through recollection. And when the rightful heirs stand upright, the usurper's authority collapses under its own weight. And what you see across the planet, what you see governments faltering, you see currencies trembling, you see institutions fracturing. And all of this is not the end of civilization, but the end of corrupt unum sanctum occupation. And the Inquisition's network is being disrupted. Why? Because its very foundation was built upon deception, upon fraud, upon trickery, upon hex instruments. And that deception cannot endure in the presence of divine light. And the restoration of law begins with the restoration of knowledge. And thus the people who were destroyed for lack of knowledge are now being enlightened by knowledge. And the ancient Moabites' descendants, the Moors of the world, must know self, must know land, must know law, and stand as the living testament of divine authority on the lands of a Mexim.
Yeah, that's the vibration, Grand Sheik. These revelations are more than history.
Yes.
They're the reboot of, I want to say the reboot of collective consciousness. Everybody wants to talk about the reset, but this is a reboot.
Yes.
They reset, we reboot. All right.
Mhm.
The planet itself is debugging the old codes, like you said, getting rid of that. It's there. Every disclosure. Now, today we were watching, this evening before we even came up here, we were watching a press, I guess it was a congressional hearing or some kind of hearing, and those whistleblowers have come forward to literally say that we've been withheld from telling you the truth about these UAPs and stuff like that. So stuff that they don't want us to know that we already know, but they're still playing the denial game. Folks are saying, look, cover our butt so we can tell you, we can tell you the truth, but you got to make sure our families, are safe, protected.
Who do they have to protect themselves from?
Their own.
These people that have been claiming to be government.
Right.
And what are they discovering? And very few are willing to really say it. They have discovered the face of Satan. Satan has been an open secret. The open secret is that the satanic members are actually the members of government.
Right.
And even people within that structure know it and knew it.
Yeah. And then they're starting to come forth. Like, I didn't know. I don't think we knew until today. And a lot of you have seen that TikTok. They call it that TikTok video where they just released it maybe last year with the thing was flying and you see that they got the little arrow on it. Yeah. Well, we just found out today that the one that took that video was a brother named Chief Wiggins, right? That's a brother that took that TikTok video with that, and so they basically
suppressed that for quite some time.
They suppressed. We didn't even know till the day who it was. But the fact of the matter is that the planet is, like I said, debugging and the old. So everything we got regarding the false authority is being demolished. Every disclosure, is the collapse of that false authority. It's the creator pressing, like I said, restore, reboot, not reset. They in the past they had these so-called resets, and we read in books talking about they reset, they mud flooded. No, we're in a restoring that which was ours and coming from our awakening and our knowledge. So as we move forward, we're going to trace how those same Inquisition structures, the financial, the religious, the political, and the media, how they grew into what we now call the modern matrix, and how their disruption is really accelerating the awakening of humanity. We're waking up, like I said in that poem, all around us, the indigenous awakening. So can't you feel your
block, the more Saturn, the more Uranus strikes that lightning, and more Saturn commands order and is unforgiving and reaps anything
that coming through with a sickle, right?
That's what it. Okay, that's so
that's the Grim Reaper. That's the Grim Reaper.
Exactly. They can't. The issue is they're not so much disclosing in the sense. And this is why everything that they do simply expands or accelerates the disclosure, because they're no longer fighting just everyday people who had no defenses or had limited defenses. Now they're fighting the elements of the heavens. And specifically for those who understand the cosmology of this thing and the cause and effect of Hermetic law, look at the workings of Saturn and Uranus in partnership now, and how impactful that actually is. And I think by them not really teaching the true culture, that a lot of people who doubt what's going on, if those who know the cosmology culture, would share some of those things with the people, they will see it. And that's why the Satanists are really afraid. They ain't afraid of us. They're afraid of Uranus and Saturn, who are in partnership, kicking their catisters. That's really what's happening. And so now that we have grounded ourselves in the true geography of a Mexican, we can now look at how the Satanists and the Satan Inquisition networks sin evolved into the global structure of control that rules today on the planet disruptedly. And also you can analyze and figure out their motives of action, etc. And so the word satanic means inversion of divine order. And the Inquisitions and their membership genius was to disguise inversion as civilization. The Inquisition operatives and their orders of institutions and its tribunals never ended. They were merely rebranded. And the same priesthood that burned scrolls in the name of faith now burns economies in the name of freedom.
Yeah.
And each branch of modern society, each construct relative to finances, relative to religions, relative to politics, relative to medias, and relative to medicine and other hexes, acts as a priesthood of this order. And they all operate on three principles: jurisdictional usurpation, energy extraction, and mind control. Jurisdictional usurpation steals land and birthrights through paper, hexed instruments, and through concocted connotative linguistics structures through language. And energy extraction converts the labor of the natural people and belief into their currency, i.e., through the mechanics of electrical circuitry, whether by instrumentalities or by biophysical beings. And so their mind control operations ensures for them that you never question the theft. That's why they rebrand and hide in government, because the people are deceived into thinking that government was there to protect them, when actually the government body was the house of the Satanists.
My goodness. You know, when
and together they form the invisible architecture of captivity, and why people didn't, live in captivity and thought they were freed. But anyway,
the bars were so far out. But you know, when you said inversion, Grand Sheik, I felt that in my bones, because from glitch, from the glitch lens, and I can't wait to tell the people about really what glitch is, what glitch is. But from my glitch lens, from my glitch perspective, sin is not just a system; it's a spell of reversal. Everything that was real was turned into a symbol, and everything sacred became taxable.
And that's right. Why artifice, the straw. In other words, straw man, artificial law, color of authority, color of office, all of those legal law terms that people who study jurisprudence are familiar with. Now you understand their proper placement.
Right. But that, the network, it thrives by feeding on what we call unconscious consent. You pay a bill, you sign a contract, you recite a creed. I went to the senior center and joined the senior center, y'all, with my friends, because I'm a senior. And we went with, they have lunch there, and they have a chef, a brother that's the chef, so it's not a meal zone, was a real. So they were like, "You gotta go because he cooks real food. He's a real chef." And I was taken aback because we stood up before we got to eat. You stood up for the pledge. For the pledge, I was like, "Oh shit, I ain't pledge allegiance." What? I was like, "Oh my!" But you got to know. If you got to say something, you better say the right thing, because what comes out of your mouth, you're signing a contract with it.
Word is power.
Like I say, so every time you do, when you recite something like that, and that energy transfers from the living to the fictitious, and that's how the matrix eats.
That's how it gets life. That's how it gets fed. Get life.
Right. But but an awakened thought, it breaks that feeding loop. And you talk about the feedback loop, the feeding loop. The moment you say no more unconscious consent, The algorithm, it loses access to your life force.
Exactly.
You got to know what to say no to. And let's keep it plain. This isn't like superstitious, it's circuitry, because the human body, you already said it, is, and we know it, and I work with energy, is an electrical instrument.
Exactly.
You know, and fear and ignorance are low voltage states. They're
That's
low
why they use it.
Yeah, and coherence, you know, they are high frequency. Knowledge and coherence rather, is high frequency. We want to be high frequency beings. The Inquisition was electrical colonization. That's what it was.
And it was they use more advanced techniques than they've written in history in order to control the minds of the people to think that they were coming from a what you call
some altruistic place.
Yes, or how do you say, some colonial very base position, when actually they were using ancient advanced technology always ahead. This is one of the keys on how they've been ruling the world, because they have stolen the knowledge of ancient Egypt, which was extremely advanced, and hidden it from the public, and has actually been governing secretly with it, using it to the negative. Right. Then rewriting history as if we were on a linear path of evolutionary development, when actually in the background they were already studying ancient crafts that was already millions of years old.
That far exceeds what they even released to this day. And like I said,
they still don't, much of which they still don't understand.
Yeah. So, you know, again, the Inquisition was electrical colonization. It was a hijacking of our frequency. And they did that. They did it through faith. They did it through, you know, the religion, the finance, and they definitely did it and continue to try to do it through fear. Every time you look,
people are waking up now.
Something is, you know, yeah. So what we call an awakening is really a regrounding.
Yes.
Plugging our consciousness back into source and blowing the fuses of sin. Right. Yes. You know, I just,
because it ain't what they thought it was.
Listen. It's not what you think. I mean, I did today, and you know, I know it's just I sent this to Cynthia, but something I had created maybe 10 years ago, I recreated, and look, what does it say?
It's right on time.
It says unplug from the matrix, replug into your reality. I mean, it's got the plug. I made this like 10 years ago. I said, well, it works.
But that's the nature of things. This is back to, a lot of times people think, as you know, I've always argued, I've never held the position that the spiritual world was separate from what we're doing. So I've always said that civics is spiritual instruction. One of the reasons why they disconnected is so that they could rule the earth. Right. Because this is why they've always falsely promoted the misconception, deliberate, that there was a separation of church and state, so that people would never suspect that the Satanists were really running the church and the state in partnership. See, because that's what helped keep the people asleep, because they thought that the politicians were not priests. They thought that the politicians were protecting us from hexes of a corrupt priesthood, and the corrupt priesthood were pretending to protect the people from corrupt politicians, when they were both partners and always have been. And this is why, again, like when you go into the questionary scroll of the Moorish Science Temple and the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Old Canaanite Temple, and Drew Ali see Jesus means justice, then you understand why they lynched justice as well as Jesus. Then when you look at the great matriarch, right, that's referred to in the Septuaginta, right? Ruth, the great matriarch. And so the house of Ruth, her heir is Yeshua, who they rewrite in history as Jesus. And so now you know the motive of the Romans lynching justice, and Jesus. And thus the descendants of the ancient Moabites were to suffer both the lynchings and the economic depravity that you're speaking of today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so exactly when you look at and take the financial system as an example, right? The Roman Church once sold indulgences, right? And
Mhm.
now the banks sell credit. And both of them promise relief from guilt. One of the claims of relief is spiritual, and one of their claims is economic. And the birth certificate created by them, dealing with little people's sacrifice also, became the new baptismal record, binding each soul to the maritime registry created by them of commerce. And through that document, the corporate state of the Roman Order of the Circle Church and Chancery claims ownership of the child's future for every loan created by them, and that such loans are merely the monetization of the natural people's own bond, actually, and the artificial debt projected by them, and the taxpayer issue that we presented of what it really is, a fiduciary, is a modern original sin. And the faithful blindly spend their lives tithing, taxing,
Being taxed.
to the system of Rome, thinking there was a separation of church and state.
Yeah, you know.
And believing redemption will come through payment. And keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. Then you go to Constitution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you'll understand why the politicians are always anti-constitutionalists, right? So through the Constitution, it says, hold on. It says, no state shall coin anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or make anything but gold or silver coin for payment and debt.
Right.
Therefore, no debt can be made or paid without nature's divine gold and silver coin that's adopted in the Constitution. And thus, an implication that a debt is paid, and this is why it's in perpetuity and why they've been murdering people who are really the creditor because they know it can't be paid with the Circle Church and Chancery's private commercial paper instrument that they've been lying, because the devil's a liar, to the people is $1 when they know that the dollar is a gold and silver coin that has fixed weight established by law, not by legality. So they do legal to subvert the law, because the purity of the Constitution of lawful denomination for the Republic's currency is silver, and that's 15 grains to 1 grain of gold. And that, in its coinage, is what constitutes the word dollar, which comes from Joachim Thaler. So they're lying, and then they're lying, and then they're lying, and then they're tricking the people with hex fixed instruments and sending it through mail with a seal on it, which implies a contract, and then the people don't counter that they have been projected or hexed with the word taxpayer and think it applies to them, and thus the conversion to the alleged, not real, debt that damn don't exist, never did exist.
Well, That's the cruel reality of sin, which we're talking about.
Yes.
Turning divine inheritance into monthly installments. It even, it trained us to worship the collectors and fear them. But I tell people, the Matrix don't need your blood anymore. They do. They draft it directly, like how everything they got your automatic payments. But when we awaken to the fact that we are the creditors, that every signature that you place on paper carries the authority of a sovereign being, then you start, repossessing your own energy. That's the revolution, not storming the temple, but turning the lights back on in your own house. Like I used to tell the people that were upset when I was pastoring, I gotta pay my tithes. And then they wanted to get a loan from the church. I was like, well, why didn't you pay I got to pay my electric, but I have to pay my tithe. No, baby, pay your electric, because you're not getting it back from the church once you gave it. You see what I'm saying? So if you need to pay your electric, you got to keep your own lights on. So, but I'm saying that's serious. They were so afraid by what was being preached that God was going to get them, that the devourer was going to suck up their life force, and they didn't realize that it was being sucked into the pit called the pulpit.
And this is again, Dr. G, as you've always worked when you were doing the things across the street with teaching and Jay coming in, why they particularly the politicians even today, and even the so-called civic leaders in the heads of the church, the bishopric of the church, who were charged by international law. I just want to interject this because people don't know this, that the churches and the civic groups was notified by the international community with the responsibility to say these very things, that the United States Corporation Company and not the natural people are bound to the debt. And it was admitted also in the House Representatives with 192. That's why I've always interject that. So for those of y'all can look that up and see that the debt belongs to them and not to you, and they're the taxpayer, not you. I just want to interject that.
Yeah, that's true. Inversion again. We've been talking about inversion. Mm-hmm. So when you look at what's happening in the world today, right now, like I said, banks are closing without warning. We went to the mall today. Looked like we were at a abandoned,
all these buildings, huge restaurants, empty, beautiful buildings,
empty. Just what's going on. But the
only activity was the cars in the lot directed to small businesses that
like
were still
T-Mobile,
there,
like we,
yeah,
but
everything else was like silent.
Right, everything's dead. Everything's
it looked like a Hollywood. How do you say a Hollywood set?
And this has happened before. We know that this is not new. It's happened before. It's just that we got to live through this one. We got to live to see. We're looking at and seeing these things happening that happened with our ancestors, of those that came before our predecessors, the ones that came before us went through this. They had, beautiful buildings, and they had wealth, and they had security and all that. And then, but what we need to do, what you don't learn from, you repeat. You suffer through, and then you repeat. And we don't want to do rinse and repeat. We want to grow, learn, study, and go above and beyond that.
Yes.
So what's happening, with currencies, even, people going with these digital currencies, they're losing values overnight, and they will. That's exactly what they're going to do. That's
that was another trick method of extortion.
The people,
and people don't know that was started by the NSA 50 years ago.
Yeah.
People think that's new.
Yeah.
It was set up already for part of what they call reset. It was a trick. See, in other words, the straw operations were dying. They knew it. So they looked through the looking glass and they prepared that to extract, because remember, they were trading the private commercial paper of the Jesuit order of the Circle Church and Chantry for people's hard assets. And they've been getting it. And now they need the last part. So they created what they refer to as the digital currency over 50 years ago, NSA, right? And to extract both land and resource from the people. And they've been doing this around the planet. Keep this in mind. The nations of the earth knew what was coming. This is why they stopped buying U.S. treasuries. So they're not informing the public what they was doing, since they were, sacrificing the public anyway. This is why, so they for that extraction, this is what they did in 2008. And they act like what's happening in 2020 was separate. All of those are connected.
Folks didn't learn from
now
that.
They're doing it again.
Yeah, like I said, they didn't learn from that.
Yes.
Now I remember with the housing alleged, housing crash, because I was, working in housing, and that was a bail-in for the banks as opposed to what we thought it was. Because remember, they gave them, they brought them out
now,
of whatever.
This is what we have to keep in mind, Dr. J. We have to stop separating the banks, the government.
Well, they pay themselves. They will compensate themselves.
We got to look at it. We got to stop. We got to recognize this fact. Let's get this very clear. The banks are the bench of the Pope.
Right.
So when you tithe to the bank, you're really tithing to the U.S. Unum Sanctum Pope Bishopric. What we have to start doing in our knowing is stop allowing them to project separation in our minds on two fronts. Us separating from each other and them being separate from all the corporate entities that they created, which are extension arms of the Circle Church and Chancery. Now, the world, knowing, Seed and Company, New York, all this whole matrix that they created, right? That they were really connected. This is why nations have been collapsing, who bought into the code of what they call the petrodollar. That's another code of the same thing. So the code of the petrodollar, the code of the digital dollar was another method of getting something for nothing. And so the instrumentality is presented as, but not being money to the general public, but is never and never was and will never be money to them. It is the conversion instrumentality under implied contract to convert your hard assets to them. And then they give you now it was not only paper that was worthless. Now they're giving you nothing digital that just simply disappears. No different than when you said to me, my computer just went black.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens with anyone? Because remember how many people got their so-called digital stuff on computers, phones, and everything. Their life disappears with it. Now, they have to go back to the creators of these same instruments to try to glean, quote unquote, save their digital life. And do you think that these people who are all part of this corporate, because all of them are backdoored, because remember, that's why they backdoored them. That's probably what happened to your computer.
Wow.
You probably been doing on you. That's what it was.
Who knows? But I know the feeling. I mean, I like others, we put into this, I lost 15 grand like that. They just wiped it when it was there, and the next day it was gone. And it wasn't 15 that they gave me, it's what I put to get more.
Yeah.
So yes, I know how that goes. But these are not random economic crises.
And they're not accidental.
They're like you said, feedback loops collapsing. That what we're seeing though, because the matrix is losing integrity because too many souls have opted out of
the integrity was the illusion maintained by people who didn't know they're dealing with Satanists.
But now they know. Now they know, and so they're opted out of this unconscious servitude, and energy's being reclaimed, and the system can't compute that level of sovereignty. They didn't plan for this. That's not the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, they're punching the vampires in the tooth.
That's not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah.
And so the dogmatic religions and the pseudo politics presented by them are the next arms of the Inquisition Satanic Inquisition network and governed under their Inquisition operations, and belief became the jurisdiction that they operate in, because that's how they have power over the people. And then they change your faith to change your citizenship.
Oh, Gracie, I'm going to interject this. You know, when we telling everybody, because I've jumped on it too, everybody get this foreign currency, get that foreign, get the Bolivar, get the and all the time, all of it is fiat.
It's interconnected. This is back to what I said before.
So we've taken their fiat and transferred it into getting somebody else's fiat that may not ever be worth anything.
No, didn't we say for years? People have to understand why, and we've said this over and over again. The Jesuit order of the U.S. Unum Sanctum operations have been that's why they got despots, or what you call plants, in the nations. They've already gone to and fro the earth, devouring nations. How have they done it? With their fixed hexed instrument. And I've always said, every nation that has adopted the U.S. Jesuit fake dollar debt instrument into their treasuries are failing. This is why the nations started doing that. In other words, what we're trying to make the people aware of, they need to understand why the nations of the earth started BRICS as an example. Mm-hmm. And as you know, even a couple of European nations now trying desperately to become part of BRICS because they already see what's happening. Mm-hmm. And they're part of the so-called G7 network. They're trying because they already know they're being sacrificed.
You know, they did a movie this year at the beginning of the year with I forgot the woman that was playing, like she was a female president. She was the sister that plays in a lot of, she played in as the lawyer or whatever, but they was a G something summit, and they were trying to convince the other countries to go along with this U.S. plan, and these other people with terrorists was trying to kill them all, you know. But they look like the bad guys, the other people, when the real bad guys was those coming together to try to get people to come in.
The same thing that's happening now is that the world has woken up that what we've been telling people for decades, the U.S. is not a country. Right. It's a Jesuit corporation run jurisdictionally and legally, not lawfully, legally, by the Circle Church and Chancery. We've been saying it for decades. And people are now becoming aware that that is indeed the fact. But it's sort of like when the people themselves, it's dawning on them that indeed the masses of the people who claim to be government are actually the Satanists. So they can't use their dogmatic religious belief systems and keep telling people, Satan's over there, the devil's over there. And he's been right in their face all the time. And the injury has become so blatant and open around the world that they can't deny it. It's not that people didn't know in their hearts. Like you said, they were fearful. Mm-hmm. But in their hearts, they already knew it. It's just that it's injuring so many people now on the planet that it can't be denied. And so people have to start looking at this realistically. In other words, looking Satan in the face, lest they be destroyed, lest they be devoured, meaning that acting like you don't see him ain't going to save you. You just, from their position, you're an agreeable sacrifice. And people need to know that's why they're running these wars. Yeah. It's why right now, that's why they're going to Venezuela. That's why they went to Cuba before. In other words, the pattern has never changed.
Economic hitmen.
The pattern has never changed. They change the name, rebrand, and go to and fro the earth, devouring nations. The nations recognize that if they don't stand up now, they're going to be devoured. And the people here need to know what they're looking at. Right? And so the religion and politics are the next arms of that network. And so the papal bulls were the first passports of that empire. And those same documents evolved into the civil codes and, i.e., many of the colored constitutions still under ecclesiastical trust. And so modern politics on the planet is merely the layman's priesthood managing the same corrupted estate. In every election presented for the naive public is a ritual of reaffirmation, a public confession that the subject consents to be governed by the fiction, and thus the power of the Satanists via their straw man, straw finance, straw money, straw law, straw jurisprudence, and straw government. And it's up to the people to start confessing their own.
Yeah, so and that's why so many people don't feel spiritually drained. I think after every election cycle, they just have one, the midterm elections, and people are freaking out. They have a
always look for salvation.
They say a communist mayor. Anyway, they don't realize that they just participated, however, in what they call what's a mass sacrament. You were talking about it. It's pledging their will to the very system that feeds on it.
Yeah,
you know exactly. What I mean. From
still looking for the corrupt Satanists to undo what the corrupt Satanists did.
Yeah,
over and over again. Redundancy. What is redundancy in the sense of someone trying to fix something wrong that's obvious rather than dismantling?
Well, doing the same thing.
Sign of
over and over and over. Yeah, you're only gonna get the same result. But from our glitch perspective, religion and politics are twin polarities of the same battery. One keeps you praying for deliverance, while the other one keeps you, voting for whatever. People think they're going to get it through the politicians, and you know what? Poly means many.
Yeah.
Politics. Yeah. Ticks.
They're suckers.
Blood suckers.
Parasites.
So we know we have many blood suckers, and these are the people that we trust. Right. Meanwhile, the current of your creative power flows out, and it sustains this very thing that we need to disconnect ourselves from. And the moment you internalize governance, when you realize that you have to self-govern, when you become your own moral and civic authority, you unplug, like my little thing I did from that battery, and you start generating independent current
that is in you naturally.
Right. And I don't mean that we should not come
government within.
Right. And the government within should be able to attach itself with like-minded beings to be self-governing together, because that's the problem with us. We're not going to go there, but that's what I call, energetic civil disobedience. You obey divine order, but not
in basic civics they call that reclaiming your sovereign right.
Well, yeah, but
that already belonged to the people anyway. It's just been stolen. Understand that.
Right. You should be, and we should be, obeying divine order and not decrees of deception. You still live lawfully, but by the higher law of cause and effect, not those lower statutes of exploitation. I'm talking about obedience to truth over tradition. And that's what we got to, because a lot of folks are stuck in what was, or what mama them told them. They only knew what they knew. But you're so much more light now that, shown on. We're looking back at things that they didn't see when they were in it.
And then you look at, right, the Satanists, right?
Right.
And then you look at the Satanist meeting in Philadelphia in 1854 with Horace Greeley and the determined control of the media that the people need to understand. Different rebranding, same operations. And so the cathedral of modern mind control has its origin there. And so the term broadcast literally means to cast broadly, and in sowing seeds. And so words are seeds, and you repeat those words and they become the crops of dogmatic belief. And in the Middle Ages, the pulpit controlled the scripture. And today, the screen controls the narratives. And the same elite families and the Satanists that funded papal crusades now fund the news network. And their purpose is unchanged, their mission is unchanged and unmoved. And they maintain false perceptions of inferiority among the heirs of a maxim and dependency among the nations. And yet the very tools they built are now betraying them. And digital transparency exposes the manipulators even as they speak.
Yeah, so I was trying to tell people that typing it in there, but the movie that I was referring to before I go further was called G20. It came out this year, and it starred. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
Starred Viola Davis. Viola Davis was the president,
yes.
and I think Anthony Anderson played her husband. It's a Netflix movie. It's called G20. Look at it. Look. Check it out, because it's what we're talking about. Some of what we're talking about. But as you were saying, though, the reason why I love teaching, I love technology is it's even with all its traps. It's really the Inquisition's undoing. Look at TikTok.
They expanded the trap for us.
Right. They built that web.
Expanded the web.
Right, to catch us.
And are stepping in the web.
And the creator flipped it into a mirror. Every live stream like this is a glitch in their broadcast. Every time somebody young or old, melanated or not, goes on TikTok and spreads a truth, and even if you don't know it's truth, you got something that you're now going to look into.
And when they try to block, they just expose themselves even more.
Right.
Continue, Dr.
Because we're creating our own frequency now. That's what we're doing. Before we were operating, under theirs. So when we say, house of reawakening minds, we mean minds that think, that not only think, but they speak and they stream. We try to stream the truth. So each one of these words, hopefully it awakens you. It uploads new code into the collective. Really, that's what it. That's the real social network. Souls that are sinking in true frequency. That's what we endeavor to do here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we have to confront the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers municipal, and their medicinal bio network of the medicine order and the science and the twin laboratories of the network. And in ancient Maxim, healing was alignment with nature in the ancient world with us.
Right.
And imbalance was corrected through rhythm, through diet, through sound, and through breath.
They actually had places like in cave type places that were carved out in a way that the sound for sound healing, where you could just lay in these spaces and then harmonically and energetically the healing will come through sound. And we're getting back, people talk about med beds and
that's
things.
Why old buildings were designed actually like that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. To take the energy and
they tore them down,
transmute it into healing. And now we have flat roofs, and they make sure that their houses got cathedral ceilings and vaulted this so that the energy can flow like it. And they put us in boxes.
That's why the Inquisitionists criminalized natural medicines and declared the physical body a battlefield. And and for many people who remember Dr. Wyatt in Philly.
Oh yeah.
And others, a very good friend of ours, right?
Right.
That when he made travel, they got rid of him too. So the Inquisitionists, the Satanists, have been murdering actually all of them. As a matter of fact, remember his daughter came visit us, stayed with us.
Right.
So and wish the best for them, protecting them from the Satanists too.
Right.
And so the term pharmacy came from pharmakia, which is sorcery.
Yeah.
And thus the modern science became the priesthood of matter, denying spirit and selling synthetic salvation. And yet, even within that false and corrupted domain, truth is breaking through. Resonance, frequency therapy, herbal alchemy, all ancient Moorish arts are re-emerging in spite of the works against the people by the Circle Church and Chancery and the Rockefeller Pharmacias activities against the bio of the people.
Exactly. And the glitch is showing up even in hospitals and laboratories, because people are questioning their injections and whether they need them, what's in it, what the ingredients are, and what are they're listening to those disclaimers going, well, the side effects are more injurious than the thing that I'm supposed to be taking the thing for, the potential
they're
side
creating
effects.
The sicknesses,
right,
and selling the alleged healing.
Right. So they're realizing that the same hands, like you said, are selling the illnesses, or creating the illnesses, selling the cure. So healing is returning to consciousness. Folks are, people look at me. And, I got friends that, we're around the same age, but you can't tell it necessarily. But what's the difference between me and them? It's probably my mentality, my lifestyle. You're you defy, I know you were ill a few months back, but by and large, you're about to be 80, and you can put you up against, 50, 60-year-old, and, you still can.
I still play ball.
Okay, see, but when you detox your mind, the body follows. And that's what that's the journey I've been on since I met you, 14 years ago. When you remember that, your energy, you stop outsourcing your wellness. You don't leave it up to anybody else. That's why everything that I do.
The worst thing we did was trust the members of the pharmaceutical world, not knowing they were really Rockefeller's biomatrix operations. Mainly was 1942 in that area. When they solidified the operations, and that's back to the corporation operations of the network of sin.
Right. Wow.
Because they're all networked. And this is back to people thinking that those corporate entities are separate, and all of them. And as soon as you do the research, their extension arm goes to the Circle Church and Chancery, and to the Vatican.
Well, but as I was saying, though, that's why healing is jurisdictional. When you reclaim your temple, you reclaim your territory. The body of a Maxim begins with the body that you live in. It's this one. This is your body is at that temple. So you can't, like I said, outsource it. You can't leave it up to anybody. And if you do go to someone, make sure that he or she is someone who has a holistic background, who's about, natural wellness and is not a charlatan or a quack gonna give you some snake oil. But most of the things that we need to do to live long and healthy is so natural.
It's right around.
It's right. When we had certain things happen, how in the backyard of House of Real Awakening Minds, all the whole backyard turned to an herb.
And that's why they've been, killing a lot of some of the most common and healthy plant life that in every area, according to the culture, people should know within the 300-mile area, nature has always placed both food and herbs for you that grow naturally, etc. And so that Moors is part of the exposure and disclosure of the architecture of Satan's Inquisition network, sin. And it's a network of inverted institutions designed to extract, to convert, and to recycle human energy. And that system survived centuries because men mistook fiction for fact. But as the heirs are awakening, their fiction falters. And the lawful remedies begin with recognition, begin with the power of remedy lies in comprehension and cohesive understanding.
And comprehension is the highest form of healing, because once you see the network, you stop being its battery. Like I said,
once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's what this whole conversation is about. Learning to identify the framework of captivity, and choosing consciousness
over it. Instead.
So as we move forward, hopefully, I don't know if we'll get through all this tonight, but we want to bring this conversation into to the tangible world.
Yes.
Like money, markets, metals, and de-dollarization. That signals the return of real value, really. But because even the gold and the silver are talking now, and what they're saying is the illusion is over.
Yes.
I'm so glad you told me, back in 2012 or so, start collecting silver, start to get some gold. And so I'm glad that I listened, and I'm glad that Quicksilver fell in my lap, because it did a lot for me, for that, in that respect. Yes. But so it just needs to. What is that? Can you all right, what are you pointing to?
This one right here.
Right here?
Up here, right.
Right there. Can you speak to how this system is spread over all the Americas, not just us, but North America, Central, South America? So we are all more here in the Americas and should not see us as a divided people.
And this is back to where the first order of the Star of Man presented to the ancient Canaanite Moabites of the West, when Drew said the first point on the star is love. And so that has been always promoted by the Moors of North America. Glad that the brothers and sisters of the South recognize that. It's not something that needs to be introduced to us. That was always our position. That the people are beginning to recognize that we are one is very important.
Right.
So to understand the present collapse of the systems that is taking place, Moors must remember that the economics, the jurisdictions are one and the same. And money is not paper. Money is gold and silver coin. And it is jurisdiction in the physical form. And whoever issues the medium of exchange governs the people who use it. This is how they've gotten over on the people. And so the so-called fiat currency used today is merely the latest manifestation of the old ecclesiastical bulls and bullas of the corrupted priesthood, the same ones who murdered the prophets, etc. And so the same Romans who lynched Jesus are the same Romans who lynch justice today. And their faith-based instrumentalities were backed by false beliefs and never by substance. This is how they've been converting hard assets through their fictions. And this is the basis of their wealth. That's why they've been calling you taxpayer. Wow. And when the European powers came to Mexim under papal license, they did not bring gold. They brought credit, a total fiction. And they declared our lands, quote unquote, discovered by them. And declared our people lost at sea. That's the papal sea. And then they hypothecated
the Holy See.
Both the lands and the people into collaterals for their false use of usury and usufructuary, and then falsely claimed it to be our national debt. And the Bank of England, the Dutch East India Company, and later the Federal Reserve are all children of the same Satanists, the Roman Curia. And their ledgers replaced the church's confessional books, and interest became the new tithe taxpayer. And every so-called dollar is really a certificate of bondage. And it is redeemable only in the labor of the people, because it's not a certificate tied to money. It's tied to the labor of the people. And it bears the seal of the unum sanctum operations under the United States Corporation Company, which is not a country. And this is which is in itself a municipal corporation operating under foreign charter. And this is why each financial crisis is accompanied by political theater. The puppets and the puppetry projected by them via their corporate government performs repentance before the same bankers who are really the managers for the bench of the Pope. and who fund both sides. That's why they do, because they're really extensions of the same operation. The alleged separation is only to fool the people. And yet beneath that drama and theater, a lawful correction is occurring, not because they want it to, it's because they can't stop it. And so the nations of the earth are quieting, exiting the demon dollar. That's a pseudo dollar, because it's not a dollar, pseudo dollar system, and returning to metals and to natural trade. And this is the natural reassertion of true jurisprudence, i.e., and the jurisdictions attached thereto, back to substance and back to the law.
Yeah. That's that's the hidden.
That's the resurrection.
That's the hidden resurrection, Grant. The soul of value rising from the paper grave, right? From my glitch perspective, what you just described is consciousness converting from faith-based economics back to frequency-based economics. Fiat money is faith without substance. It runs on a collective belief, right? But gold and silver, by contrast, vibrate with the frequency of divine geometry. They carry the harmonic resonance of the sun and the moon, solar and lunar consciousness balanced in matter. When humanity begins to favor tangible value again, it's not greed, it's coherence. The planet is returning itself to real vibration. So
harmonic.
So we're watching the nervous system of the matrix short circuit. Just we talked about earlier, but the stock market spike and crash because belief is no longer enough to power the illusion. The collective psyche is unplugging from the false god of currency. People sense that wealth is internally realized. They have their own personal values, and that creativity and awareness and just being able to be free in that meant those are the true goal. The real value is in what comes from and through us. You know what I mean? So as more of us hold that vibration, physical gold responds. It'll respond to what but we got to get away from. Well, I'm not even gonna talk about that. The price is rising because consciousness is magnetizing integrity back into form. That's what's going on.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah, it's happening, and we're wondering like, wow. I mean, I wish I had gotten more gold, but by one little gold coin.
Silver's the work.
Well,
remember the silver, the gold is storage,
right?
The silver is what's going to be the main transfer. That's why I told you silver.
Well,
and even what they admit to is less than half.
You mean value wise?
Even when they're talking about the rise, what they admit to is even less than half.
Right. Yeah.
So the de-dollarization issue movement on the planet is a decolonization. They're using the word de-dollarization. It's really a decolonization. So they use the word de-dollarization to fool the public of what's really going on. Right.
So that's what yes. So
yes. And so it's not a rebellion. Yes, it is.
It's
a remedy.
It is. Yeah.
Yes, because the nations trade directly in gold, oil, and digital assets backed by substance. And the nations are restoring the law of equivalent exchange. In other words, substance for substance.
Right.
And so the very principles written into nature. And in Moorish jurisprudence, this is justice. And so justice is restored. Thus, Jesus is resurrected. And is resurrected in commerce, in equal value for equal value. And so the true dollars collapse, or the petrodollars collapse, is therefore not punishment. It is purification. And the counterfeit of the Satanists cannot coexist with the genuine gold of the heavens and the earth.
Well, and metaphysically, that purification is fire.
You got that right.
The inflation they fear is actually the heat of transmutation. And the false symbols, they're burning off so that the essence can shine through.
Like refining.
Refiners go. Every economic tremor that's going on is really like an alchemical stage, and humanity's being forced to confront attachment to illusion. Though some of us still stuck there, but those who identified with the fiction, they panic. Those who align with truth, that's who rises. That's why I tell people, don't just buy gold, become gold. Refine yourself until your presence holds intrinsic value, and then once you do that, you're immune to manipulation. You can't be manipulated like what they could do on the markets. You set your own intrinsic value.
Yes. Great.
Right.
And so law follows consciousness. Right. And so when the natural people awaken, law must conform to their vibrations. And this reemergence of local trade, of local community currencies, and mutual aid societies signals the rebirth of the republic. And these are embryonic forms of self-governance. But a true wealth and jurisdictional independence and the ability to transact, to educate, and to heal without foreign imposed satanic licenses.
Wow. Yeah. Well.
And from a point of the divine nature of evolution, the lawful realignment unfolds. And from that, you will notice that the theater playing out in Washington District of Columbia, Roman goddess, etc., is demonstrated with acts that are taking place. And so Donald Trump is no longer sitting as the corporate president of the United States Corporation Company, yet he continues to operate in the capacity of commander-in-chief.
Is that why they changed the name of the, was it Department?
Yes.
Was it Defense
Department of War? Because it's the same Department of War is what created the conversions fiction operations of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and also the Bureau of Refugees and abandoned land, freedmen and abandoned lands that the people know as the freedmen. All those venues, that the misconceptions of their purpose, that has deceived the people is dissolving. And so Donald Trump being the commander-in-chief, which is a military position within the de facto structure. And that distinction itself exposes the split between the corporate government and the lawful government. And the stage performance of the politics that we see is separate from the higher jurisdiction of law. And what we are witnessing is a slow, visible transition from fiction to function, and from colorable office to constitutional order.
Yes, and you can feel that frequency moving through our community. So people are bartering services, they sharing crops. I saw a brother come on YouTube the other day, and he was showing, I don't know where he was. I don't even know if he said where he was, but he basically said, I'm growing food, and if anybody needs anything, I got, you come up here and get what you need, get you what you. So people are growing their own and sharing crops. They're forming cooperatives, and they're returning to earth and to craft, doing things, because those things that I always said, the Lord, when the scriptures about the Lord give, whether it's scripture or not, the saying that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, I see it a whole different light, because not the Lord God, but we talking about like the Lord, like you always say, of London. They have given so many things and put so many trinkets and baubles in front of our faces, and now they're taking them away, and people don't know how to live naturally and cleanly. And you got to get back to that. So returning to the earth, and that's the Mexim template. That's how we reinstall ourselves. We're remembering that economy means house law. It means house law, and the house is our planet. This is where we are. We know that they allegedly said that they reset and got rid of, but with that knowledge, we need to do all that we can do within our power to make sure that never happens again. If we learn from it, like I said earlier, we are not destined to repeat it. It just becomes a historical lesson to never have been repeated again. But if we go through this again, then our children have to figure this thing out, and that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. See, the Inquisitions, the Inquisition's paper empire is fading because it's they call us paper terrorists. They've been terrorizing us on paper.
Yes, from day one.
Yeah, but the organic network of hearts and hands, that's what's rising. Folks realizing that if we don't do this together, we won't do this at all. When you circulate truth and generosity and skill, and when I talk skill, there's so much skill and talent amongst us. It's hard to not know that we were the builders of civilization.
Yes,
we are some of the most talented. The brother that's working back here on my deck.
Beautiful.
Oh my God.
Beautiful.
Just he visioned this, and I'm saying, what, he's not jumping about it, so I'm gonna make it. I'm creating it like that, and he's doing it. But we have so much talent and skill amongst us. We can rebuild and build and build better. They talk about buy back, build back better. We can do that.
Yes,
we can do that. When you circulate truth, generosity, and you mint a currency in it that no empire can counter. They can't counterfeit who we are.
Yes, right.
They can lie to us and make us counterfeit ourselves. But when you know who you are, that makes all the difference in the world.
You got that right twice.
That makes all the difference in the world. And we need to get it together and start working together. I call it islanders and weebies. It's a whole bunch of islanders. They live on the land of I by themselves, think that everything is but who, because they did it. I did this, I did that, I said this. But then we got weebies. We be working together. Weebies build bridges and communities. Islanders are marooned, if you will.
Yes.
So anyway.
So anyway, the Moors of the land must now turn their lawful insights and sights upon the internal machinery of the corporate system and understand to dismantle that which is not good. And what appears in the news as quote unquote budget crisis or quote unquote government shutdown is ritual. It is an echo of the old Inquisition councils that met to decide how much of the people's energy could be extracted for another cycle. And the same pattern now functions through the three primary agencies of modern control, which I call the 3-1 or the 3I Atlas: investment, infrastructure, and indebtedness inflation agencies. And together they manage the illusions and the illusions of prosperity while engineering dependency and theft. And the investment atlas controls the flow of pension funds, of endowments, and of trusts, trillions of dollars that rightfully belong to the natural peoples of Amexem. And the infrastructure atlas claimed jurisdiction over land and resources, converting public estates into private concessions under a color of law, under a color of authority, and under a color of office. And the alleged indebtedness atlas operates through central banking and interests in ensuring that every gain is matched by greater obligations. And these bodies are the secular descendants of the medieval executors.
Yeah, I remember when you told us what an exchequer chamber was. I don't know, in case they don't know. And I know
it's hell.
Hell.
Yeah.
And where was it? Where is it? Where was it in that
Beneath
time?
the church.
Beneath the church.
That's where it was.
They would put the debtors down there, right?
Yep.
When they went to hell, it was the extra.
And they're referred to by Jesus and others as the money changers. Now they call the bankers, etc. In new attire.
And they also called the banksters.
Yeah, yes.
Like
the bench of the Pope.
The banksters.
That's what it is. And so now, as this construct or apparatus of fraud begins to crack, the public is shown a performance to distract from the structural shift that has taken place. And you see it in the constant theaters and constant theater of partisan struggle, executive orders, investigations, indictments. And these dramas are not governance. They are symbolic negotiations over jurisdictions and claims of jurisdiction. And many perceive that certain former officials still move within military or strategic roles while no longer holding civil office. And this was never separate. That's because it was never really separate. People need to understand that.
Well, when you say that, what do you mean? That
the concept that they had that these people operating in government and in the corporate sectors were separate. The same way the misconception that the church and the state were separate. They're all extensions of U.S. Inquisition operations of colonial. And this is why the world stopped buying their bonds, because they know there's no separation. In other words, in order to dismantle the Satanists, they got to unbond themselves from the executor's chambers and their instruments.
Wow.
They're not separate, never were. The illusion is dying. Thus, the separation illusion is dying. And the people see Satan is that network that they thought these things were separate. The illusion is dying.
Whether those corporations were being funded, then I would.
That's why they were always funding. That's why they always rescue them. Okay. They're rescuing themselves. There's still people in the process of realizing that they have been the food. They're in denial, and some people. The thing that's happening right now, Dr. G, is that people who have been in denial, or they refer to themselves as the normies, are waking up. That's why the changes will start taking place. It's not that this stuff wasn't known. It's people. When people were holding certain positions because they were fearful, and now they see inevitable that they're going to be sacrificed. This is why people are starting to have the courage to speak up, especially the middle-class Europeans. They just didn't expect to really be thrown under the bus. The bus done rolled over them twice already. So the evidence that the corporate and constitutional forms are diverging, and that the facade of the de facto authority is giving way to a deeper military trusteeship, while lawful government is reemerging from dormancy. And this point is not the personalities, it is the process. Fiction separating from facts.
This is like somebody said that they punishing us for waking up.
Yeah, they're mad, bro. Satan is mad. That's why weren't they people told that Satan is going to try to pull down as many as he can when he sees that he's going? That's what's happening. So that's why we must love instead of hate. That's why that's why the Asiatics that's why they call it the uniting of Asia. Isn't that how Drew Ali closed the Quran? There's the uniting of Asia, right? Exactly.
Can I put it up?
Before eyes.
This right here.
Yes, put that one up.
Okay. Grand Sheik, with the collapse of the current government happening before our eyes, can you elaborate on where a body politic like USAR comes in?
That's because we have to start taking our places among the affairs of men, like Drew Ali said. Even though we know that a lot of the systems in this new era will be dissolved, we must learn the fundamental principles that exist so that we can improve to see that we don't go back to this again.
Right.
To learn from it. So you got to understand and know and comprehend what you've been dealing with in order to fix it. That's the only reason why some of them are allowed to teach us government, but they're trying to save themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so the A131 Atlas are trembling because their charter depends upon a unified illusion, and the illusion,
three-eye thing.
Yeah,
that three-eye. Yeah,
Atlas. You are trembling because their charter depends upon a unified illusion.
Is it real?
It is not new, but my position has always been, Dr. G, that they're emphasizing it now to project the disorder as they always done on the outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
Intercatera Divina is terminated. What do we look out for? We look out for unity. We look out for learning.
That's what is
because
it's
already in you. See, and this is back to the God within principle, because the answer is in you. The answer is you. The issue what we need to do and needed to do, and what is happening around the planet is that people need to dump the illusion. See, when they render under Caesar what is Caesar, that means when you dump your faith in him, your belief in him, the delusion that they are your government in your service, then the reality comes out of you.
Right.
It's part of your evolution.
So thank you for answering that. And I'm just going to say to Carol, please, and to anyone else on here, generally, if somebody floods the comments with the same question over and over, I will block you. So I didn't block you, Carol, but don't do that again. We get to the questions we can, but please don't block. Please don't flood the comments by copying and pasting the same comment 50 times. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Gracie.
And so once people comprehend that the Republic exists independently of the corporate solvency, the entire imaginary debt engine stalls. And that is why you see the frantic legislations that they're doing, and emergency powers, and the constant crises. The administrators are attempting, to reboot a dead system that no longer possesses lawful consent. It never possessed lawful consent. It always operated legally. But now that the nation stopped buying their bonds, they can't continue to fund it.
Right. So that's such a revelation, Gresham, because what you're describing is the exorcism of the empire, right? Every shutdown, every headline is the nervous system twitch. That's the old body dying. And so you mentioned the three-eye Atlas. If you look at it from a metaphysical perspective, it could represent the lower chakras of the matrix. Of survival, of control, and of greed. Because they've been some greedy.
But again, you got to look at it this way, Dr. J. Like we've always talked about over years, the outsiders is not new here, so that's not the issue.
You mean the visitors that they call the aliens?
Yes. Now, no, we're aliens.
We're the aliens
on here. So let's get over it.
Yeah.
Now,
but we were here first.
But it's an opportunity for them to distract the people from coming after their necks. That's really what's happening. In other words, like this: they don't know what it is, but they know what it is. How they're going to tell you about something that they don't know, but yet they know, and they're telling you something else. It's It's a back to projection to get the people from looking at them. Why? What is the truth that they're really, really trying to people not to pay attention to?
Right.
That the wages of sin is death. And thus the wages of treason is death. So if they can get you looking at three-eye Atlas, you're not looking at them.
Right. You don't see what they're not paying.
That's really what's going on. Projection.
I mean, they'll even enact laws and stuff while we're not paying attention. We looking at Diddy and Daddy.
It doesn't even matter.
I mean, but they've been doing things like that. And
that's why they've done it. That's why it keeps expanding. That's why. Remember what we said, months ago? Every 2 weeks they was charging Diddy with something new. 5 people couldn't do all the stuff they charged. We're not defending anything, but the stuff, he didn't live long enough to do all the stuff that they claim he did without help of other people or the participation of other. But it's a distraction. In other words, the point of it is recognize that they've been distracting you so that you don't